Good evening. The time is 5:53 and we begin the Administrative Committee meeting. Agenda item 2.1, review and discussion of revisions to the 2022-2023 compensation plan.
So we have Mr. Gallegos, our Executive Director for Human Resources, coming forward to walk us, or Administrative Services, to walk us through the compensation plan review.
Good evening, President Moreno, board members, and Superintendent Servillon. Before you, we have some changes to the 22-23 compensation plan. The first change that you're going to see is the addition of a payroll coordinator position. We currently have a payroll supervisor in that position. That person's being recommended for another position tonight. So what we're going to do is we're going to update the payroll supervisor into a payroll coordinator. This payroll coordinator position actually is the counterpart of the HR coordinator. They have essentially the same level of duties and responsibilities. They have the same level of, supervisory responsibilities. So we feel like it's a good change that we need to update this position now that this person is going to be transitioning to another role. So we can be fair to the new person that comes in, and also this person is going to be able to manage an entire payroll department. Questions on the change? So the next couple of changes that you're going to see is some of the positions that were left out of the 22-23 compensation plan. The Director of Human Resources and myself, we sat and we reviewed the old compensation plan versus this compensation plan, and some of the positions or stipends were left out. The first one is the general maintenance worker on a pay grade 3 on the auxiliary pay plan. The second one is the plumber helper, also on the auxiliary pay grade pay 3. There was also the CMP manager, central production cafeteria, left out on the pay grade 7. If you keep changing the pages, the elementary academic stipends for like spelling bee, art, chess, music, memory, number sense, and all of those were left out too. So we're just adding those back to the compensation plan. Any questions on those that were left out?
You had another position that said on there. Maybe I didn't hear you, but it's the child nutrition. What's CNP manager? Central production?
So this person is Berta Cavazza, and she manages the central cafeteria there. That position is being considered as more than a manager position, more like at a high school level, because she manages the central cafeteria for that campus and for other campuses. Mm-hmm. And we do have a person there. That's what we're adding it back to the compensation plan.
On the plumbers, do they go like categorized as the experience or on the
It's
assistants?
based on credentials. We have plumber helpers, and then we have plumbers, and then we have a master plumber.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So any questions on the changes that were left out?
Do we have a master plumber in the district?
We just hired one right now, I think. It was a recommendation. Yeah.
So there's a recommendation for tonight's special board meeting?
Let me see. I think it was already approved, or not yet?
I don't recall.
I have to look. to see
Okay,
if
that's fine. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Questions on the positions that were left out? Okay. We're also streamlining.
If I can ask you, what's
Yes,
the
ma'am.
difference between master plumber and plumber?
So the master plumber requires a certification, requires a license. And the regular plumber does not.
And also the job descriptions differ greatly
Yes.
in the level of responsibility and supervisory role.
Yes.
And we have people with plumber positions right now?
We have plumber helpers,
Not plumber.
not an
just
actual
plumber
plumber.
helpers.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Do
We're
you have more
also-
information?
Mándeme.
You have more information for us on that?
Yes, I'm still reviewing the compensation plan.
Okay.
So we're streamlining the extra duty pay for administrators, teachers, and nurses. Right now, the way we pay is $35 if it's an hour, $40 if it's between 1 hour and 4 hours, and then $45 if it's more than 4 hours. So what we're doing right now is we're streamlining the process to $40 even. I reviewed the compensation plan from Brownsville ISD and Harlingen ISD, and they actually pay 35, so we're paying above those surrounding school districts. So that's why we made the decision to pay at 40. Questions on those changes? We're also eliminating the Greyhound Academies stipends. We're not going to be having these kind of events this year. The tutoring is going to be done during school hours or during school time. So we're not going to be having these events on scheduled breaks like it happened last year or the years before.
So let me ask you on that, if I may, Mr. Gallegos, when you say that these tutorials or these opportunities for accelerated instruction are going to be done during the school day, are you including after-school tutorials as well, or are you talking that everybody's master schedule, now they've got that acceleration and they've got the tutorials embedded within their school day?
No, it's not embedded. What I'm talking about is that they're going to be held during school calendar.
Okay.
These Greyhound Academies were actually during the scheduled breaks,
Christmas
like
holidays.
Thanksgiving break or Christmas holiday or spring break. So now the tutorials are going to happen within the school calendar.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any questions on those? And the last change is an additional stipend for the after-school program. It's called Additional Day School Year. What they're going to do with this stipend is it's a $2,000 stipend. They're going to have a committee, and they're going to come up with a plan for the summer school program each year. So they're proposing a $2,000 stipend as per the grant as well.
So if I'm understanding correctly, the after-school program will be creating a curriculum for summer school?
They're going to get together. They're going to create a committee, an advisory committee, and what they're going to do is they're going to plan for summer school PEP. I'm not sure what that PEP stands for.
So what's important to know here, and I know that Dr. McGee can add on to this, the stipend is going to go to teachers that are going to be working on our extended year services in the summer. Dr. McGee, do you want to go ahead and elaborate on that?
Yes, thank you. The committee who will be, it is required by the grant to have this committee, but we wanted to be intentional that although it includes directors and other administrators, that we do compensate our teachers for their time because they're so hardworking and deserving. And so that's where that funding will go to.
Okay, so as it gets closer to that time period for summer school, we're gonna have guidelines that are specific on which teachers will be able to qualify for this?
Or for the grant, yes. And as far as the teachers that will receive the stipend, that's also going to be delineated on what the meetings are going to be, their responsibilities, their principals will recommend, and then they're going to have a time commitment, hence the stipend.
Do we have a limit on the amount of teachers that we're gonna be able to
Yes,
qualify for this stipend?
Yes, I just don't know the number offhand. I know, I want to say between 15 maybe and 18, between 15 to 18 teachers would qualify.
Okay, and this is all covered through the after-school program grant?
Correct, and it's tied to their compliance, so we have to be very specific.
Any questions on the compensation plan changes?
That becomes an agenda item. Moving on to 2.2, review and discussion of agreement between San Benito CISD and Tamuc Federal Work Study Experimental Site Initiative for Student Teachers.
Good evening, President Moreno, board members, and Mr. Villon, Superintendent. So before you is the memorandum MOU. It's an initiative to assist low-income students to complete educational hours required by the program of study in high-needs areas to ultimately improve the graduation rates. And this would allow, to have a more outstanding workforce for economically disadvantaged population. This is going to be an agreement between San Benito CISD, and we're going to allow, our, teacher aides or special ed services to complete their internship hours. Questions?
Board members, any questions or comments? 2.2 becomes an agenda item. 2.3, review and discussion of revisions to FB exhibit.
This exhibit, we're updating the exhibit for the Title IX coordinator. Right now, we have Mr. Rey Saldaña, who is the Title IX coordinator. We're going to be updating that information with Ms. Leonila Peña, who is now the Executive Director of Student Support Services. And then also the ADA 504 coordinator is going to be updated from Mr. Eduardo Erisuris to our special ed director, who is Ms. Larissa Rivas Leal.
Can you explain to the public what the Title I is?
Title IX.
So the Title
Title
IX
IX,
coordinator
sorry.
is in charge of students. There's two Title IX coordinators. There's one for students and there's one for staff. Ms. Lee Peña, who is the Executive Director of Support Services, will be in charge of the students. Any complaints that there might be from parents and students, she will be the person in charge of doing the investigations.
Is that related to special education funds?
This is just in relation to the person who's going to be in charge of conducting an investigation when it is dealing with, student matters or parent matters.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? 2.3 becomes an agenda item. Moving on to 2.4.
Good evening, President Moreno, board members, and Mr. Albion, Superintendent. So this is the counterpart, the Title IX coordinator for staff members is being updated from Dr. Andrea Cruz to myself, Abraham Gallegos, who I'm the Executive Director of Administrative Services, and the ADA and 504 coordinator for staff as well is being updated from Dr. Andrea Cruz to myself, Abraham Gallegos, again, Executive Director of Administrative Services. And like I said, this is the counterpart. I'm going to be in charge of, doing staff investigations. I'm dealing with the staff, and Ms. Peña will be dealing with students.
Very well. Any questions, comments? No? 2.4 becomes an agenda item. Moving on to 2.5, review and discussion of revisions to DC local.
Okay. Good evening, President Moreno, board members, and Superintendent Servillon. So before you is a revision to DC local policy. Changes include allowing the superintendent to have hiring authority over teachers and at will employees. This will include, auxiliary, this will include clerical and technical, and also some professionals that don't have contracts, such as, myself, I don't have a contract with the school district, the CFO doesn't have a contract, Director of Technology, certain coordinator positions that don't require, SBEC certifications, she will have hiring authority over these individuals.
Are there any questions or comments?
This change was made at the direction of whom?
The superintendent.
Okay.
Questions?
No, sir.
And just to clarify to the public, it's not a directive to change this. This has to go to the board for approval, so the board will vote on this, whether it's approved or not.
Yes, ma'am.
Agenda item. Moving on to 2.6, review and discussion of revisions to CV local.
Good evening, President Moreno, Superintendent, and board members. Before you is another change to another policy, the CH local. So changing this policy, the biggest change is changing the threshold from 25,000 to 50,000. This is to align our policy with local policy, the local policy with our legal policy, which also delineates the purchasing acquisition of $50,000. It also allows the superintendent and administrators to expedite some of the purchases for, acquisitions of, constructions and facilities.
Are there any questions or comments?
Okay. Upon whose recommendation was this change made as well?
Again, the superintendent.
Okay, so then we're going to align this with the legal policy, which has always been at $50,000.
Yes, ma'am. The legal policy states that the threshold is 50,000. Our local policy was changed from 50,000 to 25,000 in previous administration.
Okay. So if we choose to move forward and change the threshold to $50,000, this will help run day-to-day operations, making everything a lot more smooth. That way we don't have to come to the board for certain matters that need to be done.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. And as soon as they reach the 50,000, I'm assuming the CFO, Ms. Monica Mata, will be the one in charge of letting you guys know of those vendors that have already reached that maximum or that threshold.
I guess a comment that I want to make, just to her point, that change was made where we lowered the threshold not only for construction, but also for other purchases down to $25,000. And I don't have a problem saying that the reason we had done that is because, at least personally speaking, and I'm not going to speak for everybody, but personally speaking, I don't think we had a superintendent that we trusted. So with that said, now I do, and again, I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, I'm speaking on behalf of me as a board president. I think I have a superintendent in place. We have a superintendent in place that knows what she's doing and that has earned our trust as of now, and so I think it's a good idea.
And I'd like to let everybody know that these changes were made during the previous administration, just like the president just mentioned, because he didn't trust the superintendent. But at the time, they were made to increase transparency within the school district. So I guess we can go ahead and get rid of that transparency that was there during this period.
Ms. Servillon, may I ask what the reason for wanting that to change, the policy to change, what the reason behind it is?
Well, I would like to go back to the first policy that speaks to the hiring power and the hiring authority. That has more to do with anything else than we have lost some people as we are waiting, especially teachers, that, we're waiting for a board meeting, we're waiting to, bring it to the board for approval, so that comes from there. And that was the part where we had some time that we had to pause. In the summer, when I had hiring authority for 2 months, it was just a lot quicker. Not only that, we go through an intense interview and hiring process. So we have background checks, we have committees, we have score sheets. So, it's just very delineated and very outlined. So by the time it gets to me, there have been a lot of checks before we get to that point. And also, if I do have some questions, I will conference with the principal and see, well, why this selection? Why is this person better? For the threshold, I think that it does facilitate the movement of some processes when it comes to expenditures. I do think that the $25,000, we can work within that if we have to work within that. I do know that the audit brought forth that in order to circumvent that threshold, there were some times that we did, right? The previous administration did. And so we divided up things. We divided up contracts. I have personally seen contracts for the same person, same company, same LLC, that they came one day back to back, and they divided it into 2 different days to circumvent the $25,000 at the time, because they added up to $32,000. So if we need to work within the $25,000, either way, it's going to be very transparent, whether it's $25,000 or $50,000, because we will outline specifically what we are going to be doing. And there will be no time where I'm going to divide up, or the staff is going to divide up any type of service or good to circumvent a process. I think it just gives the staff a little bit more leeway to do that. The transparency and the accountability is not only going to come to the public, but it's going to come from within, because they know the level of accountability that I hold them to. And so that's what I would say about that.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. Again, to Dr. Cruz's point, we are being transparent. And before, again, and I hate to beat a dead horse, he's no longer here, but he was not transparent. And so once again, for full transparency, we best practice, our best practices are going to be put in place. And I think that from here on out, not only our superintendent, but as well as her administration, chief financial officer, chief academic officer, there's going to be full transparency from here on out.
On that note, I do agree with these changes personally. Anything that will make the school district run smoothly. I know that we have been losing staff because of the waiting period, and I'm just going to say it, as long as I'm a board member sitting in this chair, whoever the superintendent is, I will fully address these concerns through evaluations, not through means of stopping the way that the school district runs. Because who knows how many staff members we've lost within the last year that we weren't able to hire. And I appreciate Ms. Servillon saying that she's going to keep everything very transparent and make sure that we have records and make sure that it's accountable to the board, because I will hold the superintendent accountable.
And just as FYI, we are still gonna be sending the board, you know, after, if this gets approved, the policy gets approved, we're still gonna be sending to the board the names of those candidates or the names of those employees that were approved by the superintendent, that we are able to see, you know, who got approved for what positions and then when they got approved.
Okay, I do appreciate that. I know that at the beginning, when we changed the policy for July and August, that wasn't there, and then after I brought it up, your staff did a great job of including that into the board documents, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mr. Gallegos, so you said CH instead of CV for 2.6, so just so we can reiterate, you're looking at 2.6 is local CV policy, and then 2.7 will be CH,
Oh,
right? Okay. We just wanted to make sure, because they were putting it on the agenda.
You got that?
yes.
Okay.
And if this policy was to change, but it is very important to keep the transparency for the public as well. And there obviously was not transparency based on the audit, and just so the community knows, the audit is information that was provided to us by forensic auditors that were able to get factual information. And there were building projects, as Mr. Moreno said, that were being paid for in smaller quantities so that they wouldn't have to bring it to the board. And this was done with the previous administration. And so I'm glad that Ms. Servillon is going to make sure that she holds the staff accountable as well, and we need to hold her accountable for what she's doing as well. And, you know, just like the previous administration also hired various attorneys right before Election Day, including one of them was dating one of the board members and now is married to them. And so during that time, you know, there was no transparency to us either. And so it's very important that we do have transparency and that things are done by policy, whether it's illegal or not. At the end of the day, we always have to do what is right for our district. So this is something that will need to be considered, and make sure that if it does go through, that there's always going to be that transparency for us, board members and the public.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? 2.6 becomes an agenda item. 2.7, review and discussion of revisions to CH local.
Which,
Good evening, President Moreno, board members, and Superintendent Servillon. I've already talked about this policy. The policy is, like I said, it's just to update the threshold from 25,000 to 50,000. It also aligns our local policy, CH, to our legal policy, which has always had the threshold of $50,000.
Any other questions or comments? Any committee concerns?
Yes, actually, I have a couple of concerns here. So, people have been reaching out to me. The first thing is gonna be, I emailed Ms. Servillon on Friday. I don't know if the email was forwarded to you, but it's regarding the stipends. I guess with the forensic audit findings and everything that came out, one of the things was the $100 that the staff used to receive on the first day of school. So then that $100 was put into the campus budgets?
yes, it was put into the campus budget. I don't remember seeing an email, but it was put into the campus budget. Everybody got their $100 allotment, whether they were an instructional teacher assistant. So that was put on the budget. I know that last time Ms. Mamie brought up that they weren't cognizant of it, so she went back and asked for hers right away, and the word spread, and high school got it done. But the principals had the information, and I know that Dr. McGee reiterated it. And from now on, that's what we'll do. We'll put it on the campus budget.
Okay, and then, so I've had some teachers reach out that I guess they have to request what they can use that money for, and they wanted to know if it's only through some vendors that they can request
It's a purchase order.
items.
It's a purchase order.
But is it I don't know, I remember they mentioned, like, if they can only get it from Office Depot and Lakeshore Learning.
We have a lot of approved vendors, I mean,
I don't
that
know
they
if
can
it-
work with.
Is it the campus principal that's
It shouldn't be, but
in
we can
charge of
check.
it? Okay, yeah, it's just so that it can be streamlined, that way everybody knows, because,
Yes, but we have hundreds of approved vendors, So the purchase order is just done the way the requisition is always done. But there may be, like you're saying, maybe some principals have said, just use these because it's easier to put them together. But Dr. McGee can reach out and find out for me.
Yeah, just
I'll
that.
let you know.
That way everything's streamlined, because I do have people from different campuses asking, and I'm trying to get the information.
So back in the day, you know, when teachers used to get supplies, like Dr. Cruz said, they'd go to Dick Office Supply or these other
Gateway.
places, Gateway, correct? So I understand that you're saying that we've got multitude of vendors, so, I mean, the purpose for the $100 is for supplies, for their classrooms or for their students. So, I mean, they're able to go to Walmart, or hopefully if they're a vendor. I mean, they can go, as long as it's supplies, they put it on a requisition, submit it for a purchase order, and it gets paid.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I've just had some people saying that their requests have been denied, so I'm not really sure what that entails or anything like that.
We can find out.
Okay, and then if I find that email, I'll just re-forward it to you. And then the next thing is gonna be on the compensation plan, the teacher incentive allotment for the 2022, 2023 school year. It's on page 25 of what's posted. It's talking about the teacher designation system, the 65% of the TIA funds to the teacher who earns the TIA designation. And then it says that it's gonna be paid on August 15th of each year. Was that done, or is that gonna be the next school year?
So I contacted Tammy Cruz. Tammy Cruz is the representative with the school district. She was gonna reach out to Mr. Ramirez, who's in charge of submitting the data for the school district. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the first payment is gonna be fall 2023
Correct.
for the teachers.
Okay, because like I said, this is just information that comes to me. I believe that Harlingen has come out with something saying that they're gonna receive half of it in December and the other half at a different time. And that this says August 15th, and then I guess I have teachers assuming that should have already been paid to them.
It's also based on the category. I think we're category D, if I'm not mistaken. So our category D is gonna get paid on fall 2023.
Are you referring to cohort?
Yes.
A
Yes.
cohort, right?
Yes.
It depends on the cohort you're
Yes.
in. So right now, here in San Benito, you said, you mentioned that that allotment wouldn't get paid until fall of 2023. So are we still in the phase of collecting data right now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so there's three different phases, or there's different phases of it. So right now, we're collecting data, and then once we get that data, if these teachers meet that
criteria, yes.
designation, then they will be awarded the following year, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Any other committee concerns?
Oh, yes. Regarding the superintendent applications, I still never received that packet or any information on when I could view those, and I don't know who's.
They're in my office already, if you wanna go pick them up, or see them in my office.
Yeah, I don't need to keep them, I just needed to see them. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gallegos.
Thank you.
Ms.
Thank you,
Servillon, also, Dr. Cruz mentioned last time that she had asked for information on these applications. Can you clarify to the public what happened with that situation? Because I want to make sure the public knows.
Well, I have after-the-fact information because I was one of the applicants. I do know that Mr. Gallegos has the applications printed. They are to be viewed in his office. Now, initially, what happened was that Dr. Cruz requested it under a PIA or TPIA, and so that's an open records request. Then we were seeking additional information or clarification for exactly what Dr. Cruz needed. In the interim, I think she communicated with Mr. Weller, and our email to the district was not responded to, so we did not receive the clarification at that point. So I think that was what ended up happening. Since we didn't have lack of clarity, we did not produce any of the documents. Afterwards, it was decided that it would be under our BBE local, which is ESSER authority as a board member, which now is totally different, and that's why we have the applications at HR, where she will view them, and then that, of course, puts in a whole different spin on it, because now it's tied to confidentiality, we can't disclose anything, so that's very different than a PIA or a TPIA. And I'm giving you it the steps in a nutshell. I think that, there, you know, as far as the applications go, those were evaluated by HR. He used, and you want to explain how you evaluated the applications, Mr. Gallego?
Yes, ma'am. So for the candidates for the superintendent, what we did in human resources is we reviewed their credentials. We made sure that they matched the job description, that they had, the experience required by the job description, the certifications required by the job description, and that they had some similar kind of positions in other school districts. The persons that were recommended to Mr. Moreno, the board president, were the candidates that actually had those certifications. We had a total of 7. Out of the 7, 2 were qualified in similar positions, either superintendents or assistant superintendents, deputy superintendents. The rest didn't have the credentials to meet the superintendent candidacy.
Mr. Gallegos, I also want to point out the fact, because there may be some confusion, and I just want to clarify, nobody, including myself, although I did see the list of the applicants, nobody saw those applications until the day of the interviews. I didn't see the applications, I didn't have access to the application, and so to add to that point as well, just so the board members are aware, we discussed previously about the possibility of looking at an internal auditor, okay? And we did get a stack of, I actually got a stack of applications, and I looked at them, and I'm like, nothing stood out. So I don't make that mistake again. What I did was, I don't want to make a mistake with the application process. I did let Mr. Gallegos know last week or late last week, if we had gotten any more applications for that position. Not that we're going to hire somebody, but to consider. And so what I asked Mr. Gallegos to do in this instance as well is to screen the applicants and see what our job description is for an internal auditor, and let us know if in fact there are any qualified, so that then at that time we can bring it to the board and decide whether we want to interview 1, 2, 3, or none. So, but just going back to the applications for the superintendent, I didn't even get to see the applications until the night of the interviews.
That is correct.
Yeah, and just to, I guess, bring everything home, I never reached out to Ms. Cervillon for these applications or anything like that, just because
That's
she
true.
was one of the applicants. So it was just confusing on my part because we did the search locally. I had no idea that HR was even reviewing the applications or that you had created that rubric. And that was something that was information to me after the fact when Ms. Cervillon gave me a call that HR had the rubric, and I had no idea that it was HR. I reached out to Mr. Weller. He really didn't know who I needed to go to. So it was just the fact that there wasn't a person that would answer my question on where these applications were, because I didn't want to reach out to the school district because, like I said, they were in the process of doing it, and this was supposed to be a search done by the board. And it turns out that the HR department was the one who had created the rubric, and it was just very, it wasn't clear that the applicants didn't have superintendent certificates, which was something that was told to me, and I was like, why would you apply for a superintendency if you didn't have a superintendent certificate? And then later on it was said, oh, they did have superintendent certificates, they just didn't have central office experience. And I was like, okay, well, that's different than what was told to me. So I really would have liked to have seen that rubric that you had or anything like that, and that just wasn't done. And I appreciate you for getting the work done and having that information ready for me to go view.
Just on a fun fact, we even had a clerk apply for the superintendent.
And on that note, though, I also want to clarify as well, because you, Dr. Cruz, put something in the newspaper that I had the application, so I want you to know, and the community to know that that was a false statement on your part. But it's water under the bridge. I just wanted clear that I did not have the applications, and you clearly stated in the newspaper article when you were interviewed that I did. So I did not.
You did have the applications the night of the interview, though?
No, ma'am, we all got them at the same time when we were back in the back, and he came in and gave us the applications. So I did not have the applications until we all got them.
So you never saw any of the other applications?
No,
just
ma'am,
the
I did
two-
not.
Just the 2 that were interviewed?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So again, that was a false statement.
I would just like to add that this is what we typically do. This is what typically all organizations do, including Region 1. We vet. So we look at the applications, we vet the applications. Sometimes you do have the credentials, you do have the same certifications, right? But then we start looking at body of work. And when you start looking at body of work, you look at the service records and you look at evaluations. And so you bring it all together so that that way, when you're going into an interview committee or you have an interview committee, you are selecting the best of the best to go in there and interview. And if you're not content with that, then you open it up again. Or, you go back and look at the application. So this is a very common practice, not only in the education field, but basically in every line of, work. Just so I would like to clarify that, because this is what we use. He vets things for us and just eliminates some of the unnecessary work for the team. Thank you.
Okay, so you vetted these applications, these 7 applications, and you only gave us 2 on the day that we voted as a board on who to hire.
So I gave the recommendations to Mr. Moreno, the board president. I gave him a spreadsheet with the candidates, ranking them 1 through 7. Actually, 1 through 6, because one of them did not submit the application. And then I gave him a list of the credentials as far as like what kind of experience that they had, the certifications, and then he decided to just interview, those that were actually qualified for the position.
So let me correct that, though. When did you give me that? You gave me those applications the night of the interview.
Yeah, the only thing that I gave you was just a spreadsheet with the qualifications of the candidates.
Right, and so what you gave me a set of however many board members we are, right? And of course, there was only, 4 board members there that night? So I just basically passed them out.
Yeah, the interview packet.
But it was that night.
Yes, sir.
So who decided to call those 2 interviewees?
I called them. After I received the recommendation from the board president of who should we call for an interview for the superintendent, I called them and I set up the interviews.
When were the interviews set up?
They were set up I will have to look at my calendar. I think it was set up the week of, that Monday, and then you all interview on Thursday.
Okay, so to clarify, you received the recommendations from the board president on who to call for interviews?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Based on
Credentials.
the information, on the credentials, and based on the information that you gave me, that there were 2 qualified applicants for the position. So I said, yes, you did get that. I am the board president. I did give that directive for you to go ahead and call and schedule the interviews. So that is correct.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
But to be clear, we don't know, only the board president knows the qualifications of those other 5 candidates that weren't interviewed.
Like I said, I provided the recommendation to the board president. I don't know if that information was disseminated to the rest of the board members or what happened after that.
Okay, it was not. Thank you.
What was
And,
your recommendation? That's the bottom line.
My
What was-
recommendation was to interview the first 2 candidates that actually had the body of work, like you said, experience, credentials, similar positions in the past. Like I said, they actually met the qualifications despite some other candidates having the superintendent certification. They never had assistant superintendent, deputy superintendent, or even director experience to be in central office.
So perhaps what you can do also, if she would like, Mr. Gallegos, that sheet that you provided, that basically where you've got those applicants or whatever, maybe she can see so that, again, I did know the names. You mentioned that. I said, call, did I know their qualifications? Did I know where they worked? Did I know, I know her, right? But aside from that, that was 2 applicants, right? That's all I got. I didn't get an application. I didn't get anything. You said you vetted them. And I want to correct you on something as well. If memory serves me right, and I don't recall, okay, but if memory serves me right, I want to say there were 7 applicants, and out of the 7, 1 was a clerk, had nothing to do with education, so then there was 6. Okay, out of the 6, 2 of them, based on what was on, 2 of them never submitted an application, so that led to 4. And then out of those 4, 2 of them had no central office experience, so that left 2. And that was that paper that you presented. So with that too, I said, okay, so we have 2 applicants, call them and set up the interviews. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Weller, when it comes to protecting the applicant's information. Are there any legalities to that, or can you explain that to the public as to why some of this information would be withheld?
Well, the law states, within the, Public Information Act, that the identity of applicants who apply for superintendency positions with public independent schools are considered to be confidential under the law and may not be released to the public. And the policy reasons behind that are clear and seem easy to understand. If an individual wishes to apply for a position in another district and that could then have their identity of the fact that they applied disseminated out to the public, it might unnecessarily harm their relationship with their existing employer. So for many, many years, for a long time, the law has been that the only person whose identity can be released is the identity of the loan finalist. The remaining applicants who are not selected, the information about what their names are, what their CVs are, what districts they work at, all of that information is considered confidential. So their names and anything else that might identify that person is considered confidential in order to protect those folks' ability to apply for different district positions with different districts. You may have multiple applicants, but only one can get that job. So the law recognizes the need of those folks to have their identities protected from disclosure under the Public Information Act. And that's why that type of information cannot be disseminated to the public.
And is this information that you just provided to us, was Dr. Cruz aware of that you recall? Did you explain that to her?
I'm
So-
not sure.
so this
I
was-
don't know that I can get into that without getting into
Yeah.
attorney-client communications.
So
Okay.
this is for public, because like I said, I had to review all of this. So what Mr. Weller is saying is like, what he just explained was for the public, not for board members, members of the governing entity.
But okay.
Mr. Weller, do you want to clarify anything?
Well, to the extent a board member gets information like that, they either have to be advised that the information is confidential when it's received, or the information can be redacted from the request. And not to rehash this, but in this circumstance, the district was attempting to get clarity on what Dr. Cruz was seeking. And I think the situation just popped up to where there was an attempt to get the information shortly before a board meeting. The district didn't have an opportunity to assemble it at that stage, and that's what occurred.
And Mr. Weller, and I hate to beat a dead horse, but I want to make an announcement as well in reference to what you're talking about. When you mentioned that you didn't want to go into this because it would be attorney-client privilege, was there not attorney-client privilege leaked out to the newspaper?
That's a possibility, yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
Did you receive a request from the district asking for clarification for your request?
Yes.
All right, any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned at 6:36.